I'm your host, Denise Cardenas, and I am a business and social media strategist, and honestly, just a woman learning to trust herself more deeply every day. So, in this space, we will talk about what it really means to feel safe in your body, in your voice, in your business, and in your life. So, there will be no perfect answers, just real conversations with people who are walking their own path and choosing to trust themselves along the way. So, let's get started with this episode. All right. Thank you so much, Jaimee, for being here. I really, really appreciate it. I know we kind of been going back and forth for a little bit, like you were telling me, since March. So it's just so funny because I approached Jaimee back in March to be in my other podcast that I was thinking of launching. And she was so amazing and flexible to like, hey, I kind of reverted to this angle. Can you be my guest? And you've been so gracious, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to be here to share stories and conversation. It's awesome.
Awesome. So you're in Australia. What part of Australia are you at?
That's correct. I'm in Melbourne, so the southeast corner.
Amazing. I love it. I love it when I talk to people all over the world, honestly, because I'm in California and sometimes I'm like, oh, it's so cool. You're out there. I've never been out there. So it's my go-to place to one day head that way with you.
Hit it on the wish list.
Yes, exactly. So awesome. So, one of the reasons I kind of reverted to this type of podcast because before it was a lot more about sensuality, and there's I know my podcast, it is safe in my body, right? But I also wanted to kind of pivot a little bit just because of my own personal experience of leading to moments in my life that I would say rock bottom. I like how you said rock bottom when I was reading your email, but it's just like moments that I couldn't really understand why it was happening. But like deep inside, I knew it was for a reason. I'm a true believer in that. Like I even in the hardest moments of my life, I was like, I know there's a lesson here and there's a reason this is happening. So share with us your story a little bit about like when was there a moment for you in that moment? It could have been recent, it could have been a couple of years ago where you knew something had a shift and even when you didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, I like how you say like recent and long time because even though we're on the path, we still have moments, whether it's anxiety or discomfort or unease. And I think the more that we normalize that as we journey along, or it might be a big goal or a new opportunity, even positive things can feel really discomforting. And that's what we're trying to build our ability to feel safe in our body, whether it's a negative or a positive in those kind of
Right.
black and white terms. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things I share. Like, yes, we go on a healing journey to help others and for a purpose. But the main reason we go on a healing journey is so we can accept more love and more joy and more intimacy or sensuality.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going through this crazy ride for absolutely no reason. It's
Exactly.
because it's a human experience and there's polarities to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So when was there a moment for you where you knew something had to shift for you? Is there a specific moment in time that you can think of?
I think there was one time I was on a road trip with a friend back in 2016. So I was 12 months graduated from my university course, and I'd just kind of been on this pathway or, the road forward of high school. And then I went straight into university, which Americans would call college, like my
Mm-hmm.
bachelor's degree. And so, kind of completing that massive milestone, it took me 5.5 years to complete my bachelor's because I had work experience in that time as
Mm-hmm.
well. It was a real feeling of what's next. Like there was almost so much spaciousness or achieving my biggest goal then put me in a place of I don't know what to do and who I am and what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on that road trip that I kind of thought, how am I supporting myself as a young adult? And what are my practices? At that point in time, I was interested in meditation and I'd been in personal development since I was 10 years old as a gymnast. Leadership and thinking to the future and planning for the future have always been part of me, but that can also be pressure and
Yeah.
internal expectation to
Mhm.
I have to be something in this world. I have to achieve something. I have to have
Right.
this huge purpose. That was actually what was, stressing me in that weight on the shoulders, that weight of the world.
That is so interesting you say that because I had that same exact feeling because I went from high school, I went to college, and I feel like, that was like the path, especially like, that there's no question about it. If you want to be successful or have a good life, you have to go through that path. And it's so interesting you say that because that was always my ultimate goal. High school, college, finish and get to a job. My ultimate goal was to go to corporate. That it was like, oh, if I achieve that and work my way up. And it's so interesting because I did all that, but I think my biggest, you had it way before you even like I believe got into a job. Is that correct?
So I was working at a startup company, a spin-off, and by this time I was also interested in entrepreneurship and like my own business. So I was kind of like working in this company and trying to do my own things on the side.
Oh, that's okay. So you started way younger because my goal was like, okay, corporate, I did it, I achieved it. And then, yes, I was like, do I really love this? Like that was, I guess, one of my stories where I was like, is this all there is to life? And that's when I got into entrepreneurship, little by little, just kind of doing things on the side, and which has kind of led to my story. And it's so funny how you kind of had that same experience. So what happened during that time where, like, I know you mentioned that you just started looking within a little bit more to see what direction to go.
Yeah, and I think rightly or wrongly, it was probably pretty dramatic. I went on a road trip in the middle of the year, and then kind of September, October, I went to a meditation class and, had some really dramatic visualizations. It was actually a vine and it was like spreading in all these different directions. And then basically a week later, I quit my job. Um,
Oh, wow. So it's such a drastic move. Okay. Love it.
And I absolutely like kind of love talking about this because everyone in my life knew what happened when it was, but I've met so many beautiful people and networked with so many beautiful people since then. My boss at the time was going to send me over to America to a business conference. And like, it still sounds crazy to kind of say this, but I quit the job and the plane tickets were already booked. So he was like, you might as well still go on holidays. So
Oh,
I
well,
had
that's a
these.
nice boss.
Yeah, so I spent some time about a week in New York City and then actually ended up going over to San Francisco and spent about a month living. It was called co-living, which is
Mhm.
basically an apartment with lots of bunk beds and a
Right.
kitchen table that they called a workspace. And yeah, got to like meet different people, I guess, in the entrepreneurial space and also a meditation facilitator, but basically kind of had a spiritual awakening while I was in this shared accommodation in San Francisco, about what my life might look like as a meditation teacher and lots of different visions and sensations kind of, yeah, really came through in a strong way when I was away on that trip.
Oh my God. What did your family and friends think? Like, were you just like out of nowhere, you finished college and you just decided to quit a job? That's like, you kind of had it in a way good, where it's just like you're not like a college graduate and need to look for a job. You actually had the job from your degree. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And you finished and you decided to quit. What did your family and friends think of that?
I think there was a lot of questioning happening and like, is she okay? She's on the other side of the world. What's
Mhm.
happening? But one of my favorite stories, which I keep kind of typing down as if I was going to write my memoir, was actually in Boston. And I love walking and exploring and being
Mhm.
by myself and, seeing new cities.
Yeah.
And it was really early. It was probably like 7:30 in the morning, and I was walking around town and there was this market. And I always call this scene like the nut shop guy because I was like walking past this shop and he was like, would you like to try some cashews? And I was just so in my head. I was like, no, I'm on my walk. He's
Yeah.
like, I'm just trying to say hello. Like, you don't have to buy anything. Just come and talk to me.
Oh.
And I said, I'm Jaimee, I'm traveling. My degree was in engineering. I had this like interest in entrepreneurship. And so that was kind of my tagline for the day or the week was
Right.
like a traveling engineer entrepreneur trying to figure out what the hell is next. And I feel like that's kind of been the last 10 years of my life.
Right, right. Oh my gosh. And in that period, like how did you feel like even going through that transition? Like were you like excited? Like what was going on in your internally as you were doing that? Because that's pretty brave.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I think there was obviously a lot of excitement. Um, there was like a sense of freedom about being overseas. So at this point, I'd actually been to Europe twice already, and a little bit of that I'd been traveling by myself. So
Mhm.
it wasn't the absolute first time I'd been in hostels or, in airports. I'd done a little bit of that
Mhm.
by myself prior. So there was this sense of openness and opportunity and expansion. But I think when I was over there the first time, because I went back a second time, but I really saw it as me making decisions of hitting rock bottom on my own terms, if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
removing all my safeguards, all the like shoulds, coulds, like the right thing, and just kind of went for it. And I did crash when I came home, I have to say that. But when I studied personal development in high school, I could notice people had something drastic happen in their life, whether
Mhm.
it was born with a disability or a family incident or, an accident. There was often this turning point. And
Mhm.
so I kind of say that I kind of turned the button consciously or like,
Wow.
semi-consciously to
Mhm.
try to like fast track that process in some
You
ways.
now
That's
have
how
to
I think
hit
about
that moment, like that tower moment. You're like, I'm have more control of it, and so forth. I love that. I mean, oh my gosh, like you studied personal. You're pretty young because you're like you studied personal development, and I could think of in high school that wasn't even in my vocabulary. So, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? Like, how long ago was this that you're studying unless your education in Australia is so much more advanced that you guys are being taught this.
So I'm 33. So I graduated from high school in 2009. And I guess through the sport of gymnastics, it's like, you fall off the beam, you got to get back on.
Mm,
And, you want to do something on bars. It's like, if you believe you can do it, then you can do it.
mental
So it's kind
game.
of, yeah, some really simple mental aspects. From there, I rode at a national level in high school. So like I was pretty fit and doing a lot of athletic work as a team in that space. And so I guess when I went through somewhat primary school, but definitely high school, we had leadership programs,
It's amazing.
some sort of peer support programs. And so I was able to go to motivational speakers,
Mhm.
basically through high school, or we would go on different scout camps and do little like activities. How are you going to solve this problem? How are you going to work as
Mhm.
a team? And the other thing that I kind of like to frame it as when we had a subject called psychology in year 11 and 12. And so knowing how the brain can change and the brain can heal itself, it was, I call it mainstream, but it was in the curriculum that,
Mhm.
we can retrain the brain and the brain can heal. And it was still relatively new. And I think neuroscience and neuroplasticity has gone a long way in the 15 years since then.
Mhm.
But it felt like common knowledge to me with that language in 2009 when I was in high school.
I love that you had it so young because I mean I didn't really get into personal development until like maybe late 20s. So I love that you had that so young and and it was something that was calling you. That's something that you were interested in. So knowing that, why did you end up in engineering? That's interesting. Like it's total like I mean to me it's total opposite unless you say it's not like there's something to do with it. But what led you to engineering then?
Yeah, so it is kind of linked and the
Okay.
pieces of the puzzle kind of come together. So as I said, like we were a real sporting family and we enjoyed that aspect, and I was always really interested in the human body and the healthcare system. And so basically through high school, I was like, I like maths, I'm interested in physics and this human body medical device aspect. So I actually went on to study biomedical engineering, which
Oh,
was
okay,
basically
okay.
medical technology.
Hmm.
So from that psychology course, understanding breathing rate, heart rate, medical imaging, imaging the brain, that's when I went in to study medical technology and picked up some electronics and computer science and
Hmm.
programming heart rate programs and that. So that was the transition. So I actually still work in a major hospital here in Melbourne, in that field. So that's the crossover.
That makes more sense. Okay, I love that. So, okay, perfect. And you were mentioning how, like, when you got back home, you crashed. What do you mean by that? Like, what happened there?
Yeah, I think, we can be on an energetic high and we're
Mhm.
traveling and meeting new people.
It's a different energy for
Um,
sure.
Yeah, coming back home, and I guess that was when I started to realize, there's some more layers of the onion to unpeel.
Mhm.
So really grateful that I found a supportive community. There was a gym that we went to, and that's kind of when I started doing level one and level two Reiki and a little bit of yoga and some more regular meditation in a guided meditation class. So just absolutely so thankful that the right teachers and the right support systems showed up when I needed it because my whole body just needed that physical rest and that mental rest.
Yeah, definitely. Can you like expand a little bit more about like some of the like the onion that you were like uncovering? Like what was that was coming up for you?
Yeah, and I think it kind of links what we said to before about coming out of high school into university. I'd always been kind of go, 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 doing one task and then the next, one semester, then the next. And so my body having that space and that time, it was like, whoa, like a bit of a shock to the nervous system,
Yeah.
both to create that time and then also that healing process started because we need a lot of time and space to begin that process.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. So it's so funny. Our stories are sort of similar. You just really took it like really young. So when I was mentioning how I went to corporate, I was there for 7 years. After college, I graduated, got a job there, 7 years there, and that's when I was like, I hate this. Like, why was this my goal? Like, like I didn't even like go up the ladder that much. I was just like, I do not like this. I started going on entrepreneurship and so forth, and I just reached a point. I remember just waking up, it's like, I'm gonna quit right now. And my family thought I was crazy. They're like, what are you thinking? I was well, still a single mom, but at that moment, it was like so new at that transition that I had in my life. And they were like, how the hell are you going to support yourself? My side business, I was doing affiliate marketing back then. They're like, it wasn't generating me income at all. Right. And I just decided to quit. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a month off. That was my goal. I was like, have enough money saved, all this stuff. And um, my idea was to go back, find a job in a month, right? And that exhaustion that you're talking about, I at first when I take that leap, I felt so brand new. I was like, oh my God, like all this stress that I was feeling, it's just like, whew, like I don't have to worry about that job that was dragging me. And I didn't take a trip, but alone that feeling was so powerful. I was like, oh, I made the right choice. I was so happy for myself, right? But then the
Reality hit.
reality hit hard. My body, like that whole month that I was supposedly gonna rest, yeah, I rested, but I felt like shit. My whole body, headaches, felt like I got sick. I had the flu. Oh, my whole body, because just like you, go, go, go. Like my job was like sometimes I would have to leave my house at 6 in the morning for a meeting and come home back at 6 at night or later. It just depended, right? So it was always go, go, go. And then having a small little daughter, that
Mhm.
coming home and it's just like you just want to crash and go to sleep, but you're like, okay, I have a couple hours with her. So I understand that feeling because your body just goes into shock, I feel, because we're not even present. We're just on the go. And then we finally get to breathe. I felt like my whole body was like so mad at me. So
And
I
it,
can
it it's
totally relate.
to find these points of like small rest along the way and understanding that whether it's corporate environment or healthcare, like, it feels like this big block. When you're at education, you get these regular
Yeah.
holidays and these regular breaks. And even if you have a part-time job, but
Yeah.
might be working 15 hours, and we had 6 weeks off in winter and
Mhm.
12 weeks off in summer. I mean, they were fun, they were beautiful, they were amazing.
Right, right.
But one of my friends recently said, pay the bills and then go to the ceremony. And
Mhm.
I think that this is where we're kind of coming into this next level of teaching and sharing story. It's like, yeah, we tried it. And if you want to try it, go, but
Oh,
it might work or it might be horrible, but it'll be an
right.
experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like when you're in that memento of like go, 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 I don't think you realize it until you have. I feel like we all reached that point, just like you did. You're like, I don't know where my next direction is, and you hit that point where it's just like your body just crashes when you make that shift when you think it's gonna be like beautiful and like, oh, I made the best choice, and then you just kind of like your body's like, no, look at what you have done to it all these years.
And I think there's a really interesting point just kind of came to my mind as we're talking now, that being still within our body and like being able to go, whether it's a corporate job or whatever job
Mhm.
we have, being able to show up and complete the task for that purpose of stability and security, like that's actually one of my biggest growth phases, is how can we
Mhm.
be exceptional if it's a toxic environment, or that, there's
Right.
some actual really negative aspect, but how can we work part-time, or how can we reduce our days to 4 days a week and have time to explore these new hobbies and interests while still going through the motions of being in that employment for that safety and security.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's so real because, that security that you're talking about, because not everyone has that ability. Like for myself, just to quit out of nowhere and yourself, just like, let me take a trip. It just so happened, like it just worked out for you. Not everybody has that. And I understand that, I'm just so lucky that I was able to have that transition. So, but I feel like even alone, just taking that time, even though you can make these drastic moves, just little by little, just making those changes. I think that's so important to do. And that's what I've learned throughout my years.
And sometimes when you are going through these really big healing processes, having a workplace or, work friends, work environment, it
Mm,
can actually shift your mind away from, those shadow work or whether it's trauma work, so
mm.
that we're not ruminating on those situations constantly. Because sometimes if we want to go into coaching or healing, we actually can't have those clients in that particular moment while we're going through that deep work.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Yes. Like trying to heal and trying to have a life still, it is one of the hardest things. It took me a very long time, and I feel like I had to go through a certain amount of healing to be able to do that because I went through a moment where I just like all I did is heal, heal, heal. I didn't know how to balance it.
How to come back into reality.
Yes, because I feel there's such a, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is how I felt throughout my journey. Is like I didn't know, once I discovered healing, it was like this addictive feeling. I had like this hair in my mouth. I'm trying to move it. I know. I feel. Hold on. Sorry. I don't know how a hair got into my mouth. Anywho, yeah, I feel like there's such an addiction once you discover the healing side of things. I don't know if that's something you have experienced where, like you mentioned, it's like, okay, now I need to, I'm healing, but I need to add that to my normal day to day life. Did you kind of experience that yourself?
I think there's like lots of different elements of it. I think that, there's the aspect of the ego which can kind of keep us safe, and
Mm-hmm.
you got to be the careful of, oh, well, I know this now, so I'm not better, but do you know what I mean? Like there can be that thought process
Yeah,
of,
I can totally relate to that. I feel like I went through all these stages.
yeah,
Like
definitely.
telling everybody, oh, you need healing. Like, I went through that stage of telling everybody, and some people are just not ready yet, and you just become that person of like know it all, and sometimes.
For me, it was like linking spiritual healing with the Western medical. And I was just like,
Mm,
oh my goodness, now that we as this whole collective have this knowledge, because I've read a book, we're going to save all of humanity in an instant. And then you
right.
realize that you go and talk to people and maybe they're not ready or it's not the right
Mhm.
time.
Yeah,
And so there's this whole other healing process of realizing just because you've read a book and something's clicked in your head or
right.
in your soul, you're still just an individual amongst the collective. But
Collective.
what working over time and having conversations with people, and whether it's meditation or yoga and Pilates, like a lot of these modalities have become more mainstream, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, Connecting with people where they're at that point in time. And I think that's a huge skill and a learning process along the way. How do we relate with others and just have general conversation?
Yeah, that's so interesting you said that because yeah, I did feel that way. I mean, because when I went through my whole healing process, I friendships vanished. And not like abruptly or anything like that. I just felt like I couldn't relate anymore to my current friends at that period. And it's like it was such drastic things for me at during that time. It got to the point where it's like, I have no more friends. Like, is this what healing is? Did you what things happened to you during your healing that might have like felt like, oh, it cost me this. Like I feel better, but it cost me this, and it just feels weird.
I think one of the things was I didn't think there was any spiritual people in Australia.
Yeah,
Um,
you're like I'm the only one here alone.
it was like at the time there was a lot of groups on Facebook and a lot of
Mm,
connection online, and was able to meet different people, a lot of people in America. And then yeah, some friends, like they became friends. We're like, hey, I'm here. I'm like just on the other side of the city. Like we should hang out. So that was really lovely. But there was another one. Oh, I think. Yeah, I felt like I had to choose between science and spirituality. And I like
mm.
basically took 2 years where I was doing my healing journey and cut myself off from my university, my academic world, had this really big break. And I think going back into the hospital system and reconnecting with some of my university colleagues and peers, and I feel really lucky that I was able to reconnect with some of those other friends from, when I was first in Melbourne. That was a really healing process because they're like, we love you for you. Like, you're our friend in all aspects that you are. And, the friends that notice the different interests that I have or, different hobbies, and they might connect with one of them, but they appreciate me for who I am, which is amazing.
I love that. I love that you make back that connection because it
Yeah.
can feel because even when you started, even I feel like when I started my healing journey, it wasn't that mainstream yet. Right now, everybody talks about it. I feel like it's so normalized now everywhere. Even like in commercials, I see meditation now. That wasn't really that common, right? So I feel like maybe I know I felt like, oh, I can't talk. I had like certain people, right? It's like, oh, there's certain people I could talk to you about this, and others like nothing. Like it was just like something out. I won't say I was in a way. I would say I was embarrassed of what I was into, even though it was just such a disconnection. But now, like you mentioned, it's like now I feel like I could combine it. Like I could be myself now, and doesn't have to be so drastic. Just healing talking conversations, which I do enjoy. This conversations I could talk about like right now, right? We're having like full on conversation. I love this, but also to just having other friends or relatives and so forth that might not be at this point, that I could now feel like, okay, I was being a little bit dramatic, like I can't have these conversations, you know what I mean? I can't live in this world anymore.
Yeah, and I absolutely totally resonate. One of the conversations have come up with me and a couple of the friends is spiritual psychosis and what you're saying, where it's like, I just want to be in meditations, I want to be in spirit world, I want to, go and travel the cosmos or do
Right,
whatever, be in circle constantly. And then there's this really big transition where it's like, okay, we can have that ceremony time, and of course we can have our personal practice, whether it's meditation or
right,
breath, but this is an element of our life and it will become embodied and it will become part of who we
mhm,
are. But
right.
that doesn't take us away from having this human experience. We still have to wash
Yeah,
dishes. We still have to do laundry.
yeah,
We still have to buy food. We still have to go
exactly.
to bed and sleep. Like
Right.
there are some human elements. And if we just think, if I just go to circle, if I just do this meditation, everything will be fine, we can lose touch with our human
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like this season of my life is really about embodying things, embodying everything I've learned and just live life. Before it was like, oh, I need to heal this. I was like always picking at what was wrong with me. Why did I react? It was just like so much. And I had this like big like realization, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I've had so much healing. I've been in my healing journey for the last 6 years. And it was so much of like, I wanted to learn, I wanted to heal, I wanted to learn. It was like such a cycle for me that I went through something the beginning of this year where I was like, it's enough. Like, I need to live now. Like, what am I doing? And I'm so glad I did because it's like, oh, like I'm actually living life now. I'm like embodying this, and it's a nice balance.
I'm so excited for you. And like, there'll always be things, where I'm still over analyzing, or do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, what happened 3 months ago? What happened 6 months ago?
Right.
And it's like working, still with mentors and people like, how can I feel, discomfort? And then just like move on with the
Move
day. And I
on.
was like, what? It's just like, we're just labeling it. And I was like, do I tell you the story? Do I?
Right.
And she's like, no, no, we're just labeling it. And then
Right.
it's like, okay, radio, we're still learning.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's so interesting you can relate to this because that's literally what was happening to me like recently. I feel like this whole year. I even stopped working with my mentor, not because like it was so impactful. I wouldn't be here without that mentorship. But doing it for 6 years, I was like, I need to now walk on my own. I was like, I need to trust myself. And I think that was my biggest learning lesson this year of self-trust because I felt like for me personally, healing was great, but alone, like I felt like I was trying to make myself feel worthy.
Hmm.
That was my biggest thing. And that was such a huge realization for me. Oh my gosh, it was such a huge realization. I was like, oh my God, I've been looking to find someone to trust and guide me. I was so scared of making my own decisions. I said out loud, and it's probably someone hearing the kind of relate, like, what's wrong with you? You're an adult. But it's true. And I use even the healing, even though it was very helpful, it got to that point for me. And I was like, okay, that's enough. I need to break this cycle. Like, I need to feel worthy enough just being myself and trusting myself for my next level in life now, actually living the human world.
I resonate so much.
I love that. Yeah. So, I know like we're talking a lot about healing and, I love that how much it has worked for you and it's worked for me, but we still hit those moments of our life. Because I remember when I was going to have you in my other podcast and I was going to interview you. I don't know if you remember this, but I had messages, I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to reschedule. I'm going through so much emotional stuff. And during that time, I feel like I still couldn't figure out why I was feeling that way. And that's when I realized I needed to start trusting myself. That was kind of my moment there. When I messaged you and I said that, I was still kind of going through things. And I feel like no matter how healed you are, you're still going to go through things. So what is like something
Yeah.
you do to help you in those hardest moments? Because I feel like a lot of people think like, oh, especially on social media, everyone has it perfect. Like they're living the best life, right? So what helps you just kind of kind of move through those emotions and things that come up for you?
Yeah, I think you're right that sometimes we have this perception that when we're healed, nothing bad will ever happen.
That was
But
my perception for a lot, and I would be mad. I was like, when is this shit gonna be over?
the things and the challenges, they don't stop. It's just how we roll over
Right.
them and we accept them and we don't take them so personally. That perception shift is what changes, not the situation sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we respond that changes. I think that element of nothing is permanent, everything is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the good things and the not so good things, that weird discomfort, that feeling of joy, we don't need to latch on to that feeling of joy. We can just let it come and it'll come back around the cycle. I think the power of the breath, you know, so many of these healing modalities are surrounded by the breath and finding an element or an activity that suits you, whether it's breathing into the head, the heart, the toes, the feet, our womb space. The breath is the element that can reset our nervous system. That's our power tool.
I love that. I feel, just doing that. I'm learning to do that more, and it's just being present. I feel like that's the fastest way for me to be present. And I saw this TikTok video, and it was, to me, it was like, oh my God, I needed to hear that. Like, when things come up or self doubt creeps in or so forth, it's like you're too much in the future or in the past. That's the reason you have all these crazy emotions or doubts, because you're not right here at this moment. And to me, it was like, whoa, it was such a like, just, it was like a quick video. And I was like, that makes so much sense. So much sense. Yeah.
And I've been able to notice that myself, in the last 6 months, 9 months, a fear element will pop in or a story or a rumination. And I literally like hold myself and I'm like, is that happening right this moment?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something from the future? Is that something from the past? And for me, it really helps to look at the corners of the room.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So like really that perception of I'm in this room, there's the roof, there's the walls, I'm in this
Mm.
space. Am I physically safe in this room?
Yeah.
That thing of, do I have enough money in the bank account? Do I have food in the fridge? Like, I still have a job. I still have my car. Like, am I safe today? And,
Yeah.
we're always like, when we're doing this work, like, we're safe in our environment and just that mental reminding of the environment and then coming into the body and like, I'm safe in my body in this point in time.
I love that you said that, because like it's so true. A lot of the times it's like we're panicking for something that's not even there. And I feel like one of the things that I learned this year, personally for myself, is I always have this fear of like, well, I had like this money lackment, and I still do, and I'm still working through it. And I noticed this year, through this whole like new healing or realization for me, is what happened to me was like at money, like in my business, slowed down very drastically this year. And of course, went into panic, obviously, right? It went into panic, even though like I still had money, but of course, this is really drastic for me. And even in my healing journey, I started my healing journey to make more money. So just that's the concept of it, right? So this year was like, oh my God, my business just completely drastically stopped. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? So of course, went through panic. The corner things, I remember I did that, and it did stop the panic that I would feel. So that I know for sure works. And it was just like that holding myself, and just reminding myself like I am safe, right? Because I feel like my worst fear ever happened, right? But one thing I will realize is that meditation definitely helped me uh, calm my nervous system down. And what I realized is like, even though my business like wasn't like, oh my God, or nowhere, just skyrocket back up automatically, I felt that I was internally safe. Like I was so calm. And I felt like that was my biggest breakthrough personally for me. Is like, oh my God, I had to learn that I had to feel safe without the proof of money coming in. That was my biggest like breakthrough personally. Like again, I started my healing journey just to make more money. Right? Because I had all the skills, all the business skills and all this, and I was like, why am I not bringing money? And that's when I learned about healing. I learned about energy healing and all this stuff. So I think that was my drive and addiction,
Hmm.
right? For that. And then when this happened, I was like, oh my God, I just had to feel safe internally. And yes, things just started back up again. Like, I'm like, oh my God, this is so crazy. So I'm a big believer in meditation and breath work and feeling safe within yourself before even seeing the outside proof. I think that's the hardest thing for anyone.
Yeah, the internal journey happens, and then we get the opportunity to live it out through the external.
Right, right. Yeah. It's interesting because like when people talk about it, they're like, I guess they always go into the part where like I was here and then I did the meditation and boom, just things just got beautiful. And I was like, hold on. Like there was still a lot more work I had to like be okay with and realizing it's normal that it doesn't automatically come in. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just the process of it, of just, allowing it to come in and not being so like so focused on it and just being present. It goes back to being present and being feeling safe.
It's not like I'll do an hour of meditation, the universe will give me $100. I'll do an hour, they'll give me $100. Like you've
That
got to like build up some credits and then you'll get paid later in the future.
you literally describe my thinking of intro to healing. Like literally what you just said. And honestly, I feel like sometimes even, people market it that way because I feel
Yeah.
like that's how I felt it was. Even though they might not, but mean it that way, right? It's sort of like clickbait in a way, especially now that I feel like it's so mainstream that people kind of do that. And that's how I took it through that. Like, oh, that's how it works. I need to heal this and money just automatically comes in. Amazing. I found a solution. Everybody should know this. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, I love this. And, if someone is going through their own moments, and doesn't have to completely relate to what our journey is. Everybody's journey is different. Like, what would be one piece of advice you would have given your or like your earlier self when you were in that moment, if you could?
Something I said recently was remember that nothing happens by accident. I
Mm,
think so many things we can think our personality faults as
mhm,
something that we have to fix,
mm,
other than something that we can work with and the magic of who we are as individuals. Like we're all different, and understanding that things have to play out over time. That was for me, the patience and the journey. I was like, okay, I've done level two Reiki. Like, let's go start teaching. Let's kind of go do the things. And
mhm.
it's like, yeah, but you're still a baby. Like, you still need some
Right.
time and some integration and that the learning and exploring. And I think, like you said with clickbait, like, come to this one workshop and you will know your absolute purpose. Like,
Mhm,
we're here to explore and grow and go on a journey and meet different people. And I like to say to people, you just building the blocks. You go to one meditation, you go to a retreat, you go to a masterclass, and then you go and do something else and it builds. And
mhm,
then, like you said, over time, you've got to cut that cord and be like, I'm going to be self-sufficient. I'm going to self-facilitate. I'm going to learn to hold me.
mhm.
And that's a real growth phase. So, it's an over time situation, not a quick fix.
Yeah, I love that you said that, and it's so interesting because I feel like myself, I went into healing because I was like, fix me. There's something wrong with me? And a lot of it's not even about the fixing, it's about being patient with yourself. Like, and just kind of reminds me how everybody says, like, this is a human experience. We're here to learn, we're here to experiment, experience life. And I think that's one of the best advice. And just, I'm a big believer of that too. Is just like things happen for a reason. There's something here. Is that what you said? That there is that what you mentioned, or you said something else?
Yeah, yeah. That like, I was talking kind of about our personality traits, but yeah, situations, it's the same thing. And something I think we can say we're perfect as we are, but
Mm-hmm.
in our head we think when I'm healed, then I'll be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And how, when we hold space for ourselves or we're holding space for others, can we sit grounded and be like, I genuinely believe that you and I and everyone in this room, we are genuinely perfect just as we are in this moment, in this time and space. And can we sit with that and accept that for what it is?
Yeah, I love that. One thing I remember my mentor would tell me is like, you need to love the things, the bad things and the good things about yourself. Like, and it doesn't mean the bad things like, oh my gosh, shame, but it's just like accepting it. That's who you are, and that's what you're learning, and loving it and accepting it, and just like, okay, recognizing it and then moving on from that, and it's such a powerful thing. But I guess it's like, I think the biggest thing, like you mentioned, patience with yourself. That is huge. And still now I struggle with it. I have to remind myself, okay, patience, just have patience, because that's the only way. So thank you so much, Jaimee. This was amazing. I love that you share this, and I appreciate you being here. I will share your information here. So if you guys have any questions or any aha moments for me and Jaimee, definitely post them in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. And yeah, I appreciate you being here, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful to have this conversation and talk about all these amazing topics.
If today's conversation spoke to you, don't forget to follow the show and leave a review. It would mean the world to me. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and you'll know when the next episode drops. Also, leave your questions and any biggest takeaways in the comments. I'll love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode.